Hi there. My name is Juna Mustad, and if you haven't seen any of my videos before, this video is going to be a little different today. I want to share with you my birth story. I gave birth 2 weeks ago, and I want to share what happened, what the experience was like. Also describing on a somatic level what I was experiencing and also lessons learned. So that way, this video can maybe be of support to other women who are in this journey of maybe about to give birth, or this video can be watched by their partners or friends or family who want to really support them. Um, and just to share a little bit about me, I am a somatic experiencing practitioner, so I'm trained in trauma work. I'm also an intuitive and I'm a coach. And I had a really hard pregnancy. I had a very hard pregnancy. I don't know why it needed to be so hard, but the birth experience I had was definitely challenging and also really beautiful and empowering. So that's one of the reasons I want to share this today. Another reason I want to share this is that as I was getting ready to, prepare, doing all the things to prepare for birth, I actually reached out to a lot of mamas and asked them about their birth story. I wanted to hear firsthand what people went through, what it was like, what they learned, what surprised them, what were if they were to give me any nuggets of wisdom as I went into my own birth journey, what would they offer me? So, and I found those stories to be invaluable. And so that's another reason why I feel really inspired to share this video with you all. And one thing I'll just name up front is that everyone's birth story is different and everyone has their own experience. And so anything I share here, I invite you to take it as this was Juna's experience, and I might have a completely different experience. But I found it invaluable to talk to women who've had C-sections, and talk to women who had natural births, and talk to women who had home births, and talk to women who had went to birthing centers, and talk to women who had really big challenges come up, and just kind of broaden for myself the scope of all the possibilities of what could happen, knowing that we really don't have a lot of control. And one thing that so many of the mamas said to me was, have a birth plan, have a vision of what you want to experience, but then know you might have to surrender all of it. You might have to let all of it go because you really don't know what's going to happen. And to some parts of me, that was terrifying. I really did not like that. I was like, what? I don't have any control here at the end of the day? No, you don't. You don't. But it is a big, huge journey in trust and surrender. And I'm still very much digesting it. I gave birth, and I feel a little teary talking about this. I gave birth 2 weeks ago, um, May 10th, 2024. Um, And before I kind of go straight into the story, I want to just give a little bit of a background. Um, when I was in high school, I was hanging out with a friend, and suddenly I had a vision come through. I wasn't asleep, it wasn't a dream, it wasn't a conjured thing. It just literally was like some kind of image popped into my mind. And it was this image of this little baby boy. And the moment I saw him, I knew I had lost him. I knew he had died, or something had happened where he was my baby boy, but I lost him. And the feeling I got was that it was very close to birth, or it was during birth. And the moment I saw this image, I just burst into tears. I just started sobbing. and sobbing. And it wasn't, my mind was like, why am I crying right now? But my body was having a really big response. And I said to my friend, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like I'm seeing either a past life where there's this little baby boy and I lost him, or this is something that's going to happen in this life. I didn't know, but the reaction in my body was big. And if we fast forward many years, I think if I'm really honest, that vision scared me and made me not really ever want to have kids because I had a deep fear that if I did have a child, it would be a little baby boy and I would lose him. So here I am now, 43. My partner's 41. He knows he wants kids someday. I'm kind of like always been a little ambivalent, but we both just kind of are like, now's the time, like, um, this is the time to just see if I can get pregnant and see if this can happen. And last summer, we started trying. A friend told me when I ovulated. I didn't even know. And we started trying. I think we tried for maybe 2 or 3 months. And then in August, I found out I was pregnant. And we both were like, what? I'm 43 and I'm pregnant? And it was like kind of just that easy. We were a little shocked. We were excited. We were terrified. All the feelings came up. And I also didn't know, there's such a high probability of miscarriage. I didn't know if the baby was going to stay with us or not. It was a really big journey. And I have shared in some previous videos my challenging pregnancy because it was definitely, I faced so many challenges. Um, but in this last trimester, I really started to touch into the reality this baby's here and I'm going to be giving birth. Whew, and I started to work with a midwife who's also an amazing coach, and started to work through this fear that my baby was gonna die. And what she and I both intuited was that we didn't really know. We didn't really know if this baby was gonna stay with us or not. And she felt it and I felt it too. It really felt like this midwife said to me, this is going to be a big experience, Juna, of you needing to trust and really surrender. Um, and I felt that too. It felt accurate. Sometimes intuitively I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. Like this baby's going to survive or this thing's going to really happen. But this was like one of those situations where I wasn't given certainty. I was given, no, you have to really trust. You have to trust your body. You have to trust this baby and you have to trust life. You have to trust the universe and God. Like we don't know what's going to happen here and you have to trust. And every time I tuned into my birth, so I had a whole plan of giving birth at this amazing birthing center, 10 minutes from my house. I live here in Ubud, Bali. And there's this incredible nonprofit called Bumi Sehat Birthing Center, started by a midwife, Ibu Robin, who's an epic human being. And I had a plan of giving birth there. But it was so interesting because every time I tuned in to my birth and I kept seeing like this image of the baby coming out of me, I kept seeing I was in a hospital and there was this doctor with me, Dr. Pari, and he was someone during my whole birth that I was getting ultrasounds with. And he's an amazing OBGYN here in Bali. So that was interesting that kept coming up. And I did share with my partner, Matt, and also my doula, Mahika, that there was this feeling I had that we might start at Bumi Sehat and then end up with Dr. Pari at the hospital for some reason. And they both made a mental note of that. Like, okay, this may be what happens. We want to really trust your intuition here. And I do really appreciate that there was such an emphasis from my doula, from Matt, from even the people at Bumi Seha of like, the mama knows and really trust your intuition. So fast forward a little bit to a little over 2 weeks ago. And I noticed about 3 days before I went into labor, I was exhausted, exhausted. I'll also share here, I'm 44 years old now. Um, and so I didn't know if like, okay, birth is going to be a little harder on me because of my age. I just had no idea what it was going to be like, just based on the reality that I'm a little bit of an older mama compared to a lot of mamas that give birth in their 20s and 30s. But the 3 days before labor, I just couldn't even keep my head up. I had to keep laying down on the bed, on the couch, and I was also ravenously hungry. And I was like, I wonder if I'm going to be going into labor soon. I was 30, 38 weeks, is that right? No, 39 weeks. So I actually went into labor 2 days before my due date. And Thursday morning on May 9th, I woke up and there was a little bit of cramping, that little period crampy feeling that they describe, that they on the internet describe can happen as like a pre-sign of labor. I was starting to have that, and I hadn't had that my whole pregnancy. There's just like some period cramp feelings in my low back and where my ovaries are. It's like, this is interesting. Um, I had also had the intuition the night before to draw a picture of a dragon. And I had heard a little voice say, like, draw your dragon. I had had this feeling of this dragon, this big blue, powerful dragon energy had really followed me through my pregnancy and had really showed up for me during as I started to prepare for birth as kind of an animal ally that was really going to support me in staying connected to my power, staying connected to my true self during birth. So I heard this little voice say, if you draw your dragon, you're going to go into labor the next day. So Wednesday night, I did a whole painting of my dragon. Thursday morning, I had some cramps. I wonder if this is happening, but I didn't want to get too excited. I had also had some mamas say to me, if you start to go into labor or have contractions, don't make a big deal of it. Don't get all amped up. You need to really conserve your energy. And that, some women are like, oh my God, I'm having some contractions. And they start timing it right away or calling everyone and they use up a lot of energy. So kind of tried to make no big deal of it. Had a few clients on Thursday morning, and I was noticing, wow, these sensations down here are getting stronger and they're happening in a bit more of a wave. And they feel different than Braxton Hicks. So, Braxton Hicks, for me at least, felt more kind of like tight front of the belly and a little bit more in the middle of the belly, sometimes the top of the belly. And these sensations felt like they were in a bit of a different place. They were more kind of where my ovaries were, more where my uterus had formerly been. They were a little bit more radiating into the upper legs and into the lower back, like almost like I was wearing a belt and my back was suddenly getting tight. And again, they would happen in this kind of wave and then it would subside, but it was pretty mild. So I shared with my clients, hey, I might be having contractions. um, and then by about midday, a friend came over and and this friend had been with her partner uh, just 3 months ago when her partner had given birth. And so my friend, I was kind of sharing with her, I might be having contractions. I don't know if this is what's happening. Kind of shared with her some of the sensation that it was getting more and more intense, but that, I had also heard from women that start to have these contractions and it could go on for days and days, sometimes even weeks. So I was trying to just remain chill about it. But maybe by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, the sensations started to get a lot stronger. took an Epsom salt bath. My partner came home from work. Um, and I was like, whoa, this is full on. And during the bath, I noticed this kind of goopy thing floating in the water. And we collected it and we looked up online and we're like, that's my mucus plug. So the mucus plug is what blocks the cervix, and keeps a bit of a difference, or not a distinction between, baby world and outside world. And it's like that little plug, and it often can come out. And that's a sign that also you might be going into labor soon. So there was the mucus plug. I was like, oh my God, this is real. This is happening. So we, again, remained calm. I had heard from mamas, make sure to eat a lot of food, eat some protein, because pretty soon you might not be able to eat. And we finished packing our birthing center bags. So those were all set up. And then we just ordered some food and took things kind of easy. And then the contractions continued to ramp up. And I asked many mamas, as I was about to go into my 38, 39 weeks, I called up a lot of mamas. I said, can you describe for me contractions? And so many mamas have trouble remembering what contractions feel like. Me too. Me too. I can't even believe how much you get amnesia about contractions. But thank goodness I had actually recorded in my phone describing at least the beginning of a contraction. The best way I can describe it is just that there is this strong sensation that just starts to, again, it's like kind of period cramps. It starts to amp up in the upper legs, in the lower body, in the back. But then all of a sudden it becomes period cramps times 1,000. And then as it starts to hit a peak, I cannot remember at all what the sensation feels like. Full blown amnesia. All I know is that it's so intense. And it's so intense for me. And everyone, again, is going to be different. Some women don't experience this as pain. I certainly experienced it as a lot of pain. And it was so painful that I would vomit with each contraction. Um, and it was shocking how painful it was. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. And I'm so glad for the mamas that didn't sugarcoat it for me. They're like, oh, it's gnarly. It's gnarly. And it is. And you can't handle it, but you do. Like, it's so intense. You literally can't handle it, but then you somehow do. And then it passes. And that's like the gift of it, is it's a wave. And another thing some mamas told me was that when the wave passes, surrender, relax, melt into the bed, crumble onto the floor, and just like completely relax, because you're going to need your energy for the next contraction. So don't worry, don't think about the next one, just completely relax. So I took that advice and I would kind of like doze in between contractions. My partner had a contraction app and he was timing them. And I was able to get some food down, but then it all ended up coming up. And now it was evening time. And by about 9:45 at night, we realized my contractions were about 3 to 4 minutes apart. So we called up the doula. She said, yep, time to get to the birthing center, get to Bumi Sehat. We called up our driver. We got all the things ready. I'm like on hands and knees on the floor, cradling a pot that I keep throwing up in. My mom was there. She was a little kind of mildly dissociated and in shock. And my partner was there. Get in the car, head to Bumi Sehat. I'm on the floor of the car, like holding my partner, just cradled in his lap with the little throw up thing in his lap. And we got to the birthing center. My doula had set up the room with beautiful candle lights and beautiful ambiance, and the midwives were there. I was actually so impressed by how like loving and peaceful it all felt to arrive there. At 10:30 at night. And and then the whole journey of active labor began. I was 5 centimeters dilated. I had them check, and and that journey was intense and powerful. And they had me, kind of trying different positions. Like I was laying on the ground for a while. I had brought a mat, so I was like kind of on this mat. And then I'd go to the bed and lay on the bed. I would be on all fours. I would kind of sit in this chair that had a hole in it. I would lean against my partner, and I would ride out the contractions in different positions. And I kind of ended up finding that, leaning forward during a contraction didn't work for me. I felt like I had to kind of be upright, but with my legs open. Um, I ended up being completely naked for most of it. In pre-labor, you think you're going to care about all these things, and when you're in it, you're just like, I don't care. I'm naked. I'm, just there's, midwives and my partner and our friend Bex and my mama and my doula and I was so held and supported. And I rode out that evening with a lot of love and support. And wow, those contractions were intense. I was guided by my doula to make these kind of like low noises and to practice breathing and like breathing energy down. And it was hard. There was like a lot of times where I was making these high pitched noises. It was almost like I just wanted to escape my body during the peak of the contraction. And she kept guiding me to bring the energy in. And it was so hard. When I was about 7 centimeters dilated, I started pushing and I couldn't help it. I was trying so hard not to push. And again, the midwife and my doula kept guiding me to not push and to practice this certain kind of breathing when I'd start to push to kind of mitigate that desire. And that was so hard. It was so hard not to push. And the trouble with pushing when you're not fully dilated is that you can really kind of inflame the cervix. And I didn't want to do that. But man, that urge to push came on strong. I think I just kind of wanted it over, done with. It was so fascinating post birth. My partner and the other people had taken a lot of photos and videos, which I'm really glad they did. And in a lot of them, my eyes are rolled back in my head. I look like I'm in a trance. I look like I'm really on a deep journey of ayahuasca or toad medicine or something. And it really felt that way. Pre-birth, I had a big fear that I was going to have a lot of anxiety come up during my birth process, and I didn't. I think in large part because I felt so held and supported, and in large part because the journey of birth is so full throttle intense and such a full on somatic experience that there's really not room for thought. There's not room for a lot of, at least in my experience, there was not room for me to go into worries and fears. I was just so fully in it. And once in a while, when a thought would come up, it was kind of almost novel. The only thing I can relate it to is like times when I've had such intense food poisoning that you're just cradling the toilet and you're just so in it that you can't really think about anything else. And that was kind of what it was like for me. Oh my God, it's so nice to be able to like laugh about all this. Because in the moment, it was intense. It was really full on. And but it wasn't scary. It was just like my body is doing this right now. And my body needs to do this because this is how we help bring this baby into the world. And I think I was really in trust of that. And I had such an incredible support team of women around me, plus my partner, that there was just trust. I did at certain points when, I had a little bit more prefrontal cortex, I would remind myself, like, call in my ancestors right now. Call in that beautiful, powerful blue dragon. Become the blue dragon right now. Like, feel your power, feel your body's power. Surround yourself with all the mothers of the world who have been in this journey, and call in their love, their support, their holding. And so I would do that, and I would just surround the birthing room with this golden light. And I had a mantra that I would sometimes say to myself, just, I trust my body, I trust my baby. And I'd heard many other women use this mantra, and that really was something that I would just call in moments when I could remember it. Because again, this process was so intense. There's not much thought happening. There's just a very full-on visceral experience. So as I rode out those waves, I noticed that there was a little bit more light outside, and it was maybe 5:30 a.m. One of the midwives or doctors came in, checked me again, and said I was fully dilated. And I was like, phew, I can finally do the thing I've had the impulse to do, which is to push. And everyone got excited. Ibu Robin was there. She's like, everyone get out the receiving blankets, warm them up. My partner had the blanket in his shirt to get it warm for the baby. My mom had one in her shirt to get it warm for the baby. People started singing the Gayatri mantra. It was time for me to push. I think this was around 5:30 a.m. Sun was barely starting to crack. And everybody's like, yes, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And I started to push, and it felt good. The contractions were intense, but this next level of pushing was like, and I've heard other women describe this too, where you feel like you're going to get somewhere now. You can like actually make some movement happen. And I had also heard women say, like, you don't need to push, the body pushes. And in my experience, I needed to push. There was an actual, my body's pushing, but I need to participate in this too. So I take a deep breath a deep inhale on the contraction, and then hold the breath and just flow all that energy, all that breath energy, holding it, pushing it down, all the way down, as if you're taking a biggest poo of your life. And then after I'd floated all down, then I could take an inhale, and then I would, if the contraction was still here, I'd do another one and just flow the energy down. Whew, it was intense. And with each contraction, then they would put a Doppler on me and measure the baby's heartbeat, make sure it was all good, continue to be steady and strong. And I could feel his head. I reached down, reached my fingers inside myself, and I could feel that he was maybe just half an inch from crowning. It was exciting. It felt so good. I was like, oh my God, my baby's coming. His heart rate is strong. He's going to live. He's going to live. He's going to be okay. And then I kept having contractions, and I kept pushing. And I noticed he just stayed in the same place. Sometimes he'd go in a little bit more and sometimes come out a little bit more, but he stayed about half an inch from crowning. And then the hours passed by, and some more hours passed by, and some more hours passed by. And it was like, afternoon. This is weird. How come he's still here? And his heart rate was steady, but I couldn't push him out. And everyone just said, push as hard as you can. I was like, I'm giving it my all. And I started to lose my energy. I was drinking electrolyte water. They fed me some chocolates. They fed me some honey water. I still couldn't eat anything. At a certain point, I couldn't pee anymore, which means maybe his head or his body was pushed against my bladder somewhere. And by about afternoon, I just noticed that my contractions were starting to die down a little bit, which just baffled me. Like, this baby needs to get out, but my contractions have less strength. They have less frequency. they're not lasting as long. So I started to do things like I started to move and shake my body to try to activate the contractions, which was such a different experience than I had had the night before, where I was like, God, I don't want to experience these contractions. When will this end? To now I'm trying to generate these contractions because I need to get this baby out. We need this baby out of me. So that kind of felt empowering in a certain way. And everyone was just a trooper. My partner just continued to be there. My mom, our friend Bex, Ibu Robin, the other midwives, they were just like, yes, my doula was amazing. This had gone on a long time. I ended up being in the pushing phase of labor for 14 hours. 14 hours. Everything online says it's supposed to last anywhere from like 30 minutes to maximum maybe 2 hours. I was in it for 14 hours. And at a certain point, I remember I looked at Ibu Robin and I just said, like, I might need some help here. I need some help. And she also asked me, she's like, is there anything that's blocking you from birthing this baby? And I shared with her and everyone there that I've had a fear that this baby would die and that maybe some part of me is holding him because it's my like ability to hold on to him. And that maybe if I let him go, he might not survive. And so I named that with everyone. I shared with them about my blue dragon, and they invited me to really call in my blue dragon. Partner even like put the blue dragon and like kind of like pinned it to his shirt so that the painting I had made or the picture I had made was right there. Everyone just stayed positive, and that really helped. And they trusted me. They trusted my body. They trusted my baby. And then around 7:30 p.m., I had a big contraction, and they used the Doppler afterwards, and I noticed the baby's heart rate was wavering. And so they just called it, said it's time. It's time to go to the hospital and see Dr. Pari. And I feel like I almost smiled. Like I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew we'd end up with Dr. Pari. And I think it was beautiful because it also gave me this feeling of trust. Like I can trust my intuition. Like I think this is all going to be okay. So we jumped in the ambulance, and some people got on motorbikes and cars, and we zoomed off to the hospital. And I noticed that there was this way that I kind of closed. I During the ambulance ride and even when we got to the hospital, I kind of closed almost the feeling of my body. Like I wasn't open now to giving birth because we had been in this space of transition. So once we got to the hospital, I had to like actually conjure a feeling of opening again. Like I'm safe. I had to remind myself, you're safe now. You're at the hospital. Now it's time to open. And I had heard that before, that like even when, an animal in nature, like even a cat is in labor and it's in a den or it's somewhere and there's like dogs barking, that it will actually stop its labor and actually go somewhere else to continue giving birth until it's somewhere where it feels safer. And so that was my experience, was like my body kind of closed and I had to really open my body again and remind myself I was safe. And even in that hospital room, which was, a bit more, I don't know, it was just not quite like the ambience of the birthing center. I had to call in my guides, call in all the mothers, call in my ancestors, imagine it surrounded with this golden light, and really remind myself I'm safe. It's time to open here. It's time to open again. So that was a beautiful reminder and experience. And there I was in the hospital room. Ibu Robin was there, my doula. My mom had to wait outside, unfortunately, but my partner was there. And the different midwives were there from the hospital. And then Dr. Pari was there. And I felt so good seeing him and knowing I was now in his hands for this final part. And he ended up cutting my perineum. He ended up getting this suction machine out to be able to kind of suction the baby's head if need be. And that all was necessary. It all needed to happen. A dog maybe trying to get in. So, this final kind of part of the journey, oh, it was intense. It was big. And I think we were all just ready. We were ready for this baby to come through. And they gave me Pitocin to activate my contractions again. And then the suction machine wasn't quite working. And my contractions were coming. And I was trying to push even without the suction machine working. And I still couldn't quite get this baby's head out of me. And so finally, they got the suction machine to work, and I started to have a big contraction. And I said, I'm having a big wave. And I heard all these voices saying, Juna, this is it. Now's the time. I think my partner said it. I think the Ibu Robin said it. They all just said, this is it. Give it your all. So I remember taking this one big inhale. And I think the midwives were then about to start pushing on my belly. And I just gave it my all. I pushed the energy all the way down as if I was taking the biggest poo in the universe, breathing this baby out of me. And I needed help. I needed help. I could just feel it. You know, some women don't need that. And in this moment, I needed it. And it felt so good to have it, to have their hands on me, to have everyone cheering me on. And to even, that suction machine did help. And I felt in this one last moment of pushing this kind of feeling of pop, and the baby's head popped out of me. And it was painful and intense and beautiful and relieving. And then they said, one more, give it one more. And so again, I just took this sip of air and just pushed with everything in me. And I felt his shoulders come out and then his whole body kind of like slither out of me. Oh, and the relief in that moment, like the full sheer joy of just like relief, like, oh, we did it, we did it. And then my next thought was, is he okay? Is he okay? And I put him on my chest right away. And he was whimpering like these beautiful little like whimpers. And I looked down at him like, oh my God, he's here. He's here. He's here and he's breathing and he's okay. And they're like, clearing out his nose and moving him a little bit on my chest. And there he was, our little baby boy, just whimpering and kind of like almost half crying. And I just was like in bliss. And it probably helped that I'm also like, had been getting this Pitocin, which is synthetic oxytocin drip, but I'm like in bliss. And Ibu Robin and my doula and the other midwife were singing the Gayatri mantra. And we're in this hospital room, and Dr. Pari's slowly starting to pull the umbilical cord to get the placenta out of me. My contractions have totally stopped. And here he is, just whimpering. And I'm like marveling. I'm like, you're alive. You're alive. Like, you chose to be here. You chose me as your mom and Matt as your father. And you chose this life. And I get to be your mom. And I'm just like, oh my God. Oh my God. What an amazing thing. Oh, and in that moment, like the pain of, the doctor sewing me up and all of that just feels, and him taking out the placenta, like all of it just feels irrelevant. Like nothing matters. It's just this moment of this baby on my chest. And I remember at a certain point, I like looked at Dr. Pari, I looked at the nurses, I looked at the midwives, and I just told everyone, I love you, I love you, I love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, I just felt so grateful we did it. We did it. And I know a lot of birth stories kind of end there. And I think the other thing I'll just share is that that night, we were going to sleep in the hospital and like stay in one of their rooms. And like, I just had the most massive experience. And now I have a baby that I have to like suddenly care for. And Matt and I forgot to put a diaper on him. And so he pooped everywhere. And that first night, I'm just like, do I sleep next to him? I'm afraid I'm going to squish him. Do I put him in this little bassinet thing? I didn't know what to do. I was so tired. I had like the biggest headache ever. I just slept with him next to me and breastfed him to the best of my ability. But I'm just like, baby? I have a baby? Like, what do you, ah, what? I have a baby? And I'm like, so wobbly from the birth and not having eaten for however many hours. And what a journey. Like, what a trip it is that you go through this massive experience and then they're like, here's your baby. Oh, so I think for those of you who've listened to this, what I would just share is this is a massive journey. It's a massive act of surrender. It's a massive journey, and it usually only lasts a couple of days, which is kind of great, which is kind of nice because it's so full on and so intense. And that we really can trust our bodies and we can trust our babies and we can just really and trust our intuition that you'll know if something's wrong, you'll know if something needs to happen. Like I just had a deep knowing at a certain point, like I need help. This is not working as it is. Like we need something different here. And I'm so grateful that I didn't also choose to have my whole birth journey at a hospital, that I chose the birthing center. And again, everyone's going to feel totally different, but I just had this deep knowing like I need to go to the birthing center. I need to have the bulk of my birth there. And I'm so glad I did because it really set a tone of I'm being held and I can trust this. And there are wise people around me that know birth, know what needs to happen, and I can really let go and be in this process with my baby and my body and let them be really holding that. And yeah, so I'm really grateful just the way it all played out. And it wasn't my picture perfect birth story, but it was the best birth experience I could have had because my baby was safe and is healthy and I also just felt so deeply held and supported. Um, I think the thing I'm also just struck by is how every human on this planet was birthed by a strong ass mama and a courageous mama who endured something big to bring this baby in. Ibu Robin later reflected to me, she's like, wow, that like that 14-hour pushing phase, it felt like there was a spiritual battle going on. Like there was there was something bigger going on. And I felt that. And I didn't know if it was me holding it back or the baby or who knows, but it just felt like something big was being worked out. And we just had to trust that process. And then also trust when it was time to get some additional support. Oh, yeah, it feels really nice to share this story. I have a healthy, beautiful little boy, little Skyler. And he's strong. He's really strong. And I feel just so grateful to be his mom and get to experience being with him and loving him and supporting him in this life to the best of my ability. I kind of do have a sense that he was a baby that I had in a past life that I lost, and that he's come back in this life, and we get to do it this time together. And yeah, there's something about that that just like really deeply touches me. Like I know him. I know him. I've known him before, and he's come back. Yeah, if I was to say anything else to any of you mamas out there, like as best you can, set yourself up with an amazing team of support. You know, to have a doula, to have a midwife, to have amazing doctors that you really trust that are going to honor your wishes. Um, to feel that level of attunement and care is so important because it's such a vulnerable time. We're in such an altered state. It's really not normal everyday life where you have your active prefrontal cortex and neocortex online. Like you really are on a really intense medicine journey, is one way to think of it. And you need a really epic team around you. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is to trust yourself and to choose to trust yourself and to trust your body and to trust your baby. And it's not necessarily like I fully went into this being like, yes, I trust myself and I trust my baby, but it was an active choosing it and saying it again and again and again, and really choosing that belief system again and again. So that's my gift to all of you. I hope this is in service to anyone out there who's going to be giving birth soon, or any of you friends, family who want to support this person as best you can. And I'm going to go feed my baby because I hear him crying right now. All right. Wishing you all a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.